All right, you look fairly normal today.
Fairly
Like,
no, yeah, yeah. Nothing too out of the
you look
ordinary
like a
today.
regular dude today. I'm so disappointed.
I got rid of the stash. Um, that's a whole thing. I don't think I've
What
reported to
happened,
you
man?
about all that. I want to get there, but I think first we need to. Am I distorting? Is my
I
audio
don't hear any
distorting?
distorting.
Okay. All
No.
right, making sure. Okay. Um, the thing is that I quit the play I was in.
No, Simon, no.
Yeah, and my quitting and a few other people's quitting of the play shut it down. So it's been a big hubbub. It's been a
Wow.
big deal. So, but first, before we get there, can we return to last podcast? We were talking about trading places.
Yes, yes,
Okay, so in trading places, Dan Aykroyd does blackface.
yes.
And I wanted to talk to you about that last
Right.
week, but we didn't get to it. It didn't fit the conversation. How do you react to that today?
Um, I think primarily is, I mean, I don't like it, but I also think it's there's a weird thing about what happens in the past and what we think we would do in the past
Yeah,
differently.
yeah.
And I'm not sure, like, okay, let's look at it this way. Like, my feeling of my own blackness has changed tremendously since I've become older. I'm a middle-aged man now. I know I
Yeah.
don't look like it, but
No, no, no. You're
you
the
know, it's
the
beautiful.
flower of youth over there.
Flower of youth. Like, I feel my blackness more as I've gotten older. When I mean, when I saw that movie, I'd had no idea. Like, I rather than like, oh,
Exactly.
that's
Right.
weird. So I don't necessarily like cast all this like negativity towards people of the past for certain things like that. Like what Ted Danson did that, right? At the Emmys or something, or with
Oh
Whoopi
yeah, I
Goldberg.
forgot
Remember
about
that?
that.
And
Yeah, I
that was
forgot all
bad.
about it. It
And
was
and
bad.
yeah, remember that's bad. It's definitely not appropriate, but I feel like it's kind of like people say about like George Washington or all these people who had slave owners and like way back then. Like,
Yeah.
what would you do differently during that time? Like, I mean,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
Simon during
We're
that time may have been a slave owner, but you may not be the current version of yourself. Like,
exactly. I'd be more like Jefferson, I think.
right, you'd
Be
be
like
sleeping
looking
with
at
all
them
the black
slave
women.
girls, be like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, baby. I think we'd like to say we have this outrage from the past, but honestly, you really don't know what you would feel about it probably at that time. You know.
No, and that is a discussion I've tried to have with my children about
Mm,
cancel culture. I think holding people to accountability who are alive is very different than holding people to accountability who were now
yeah.
deceased, and trying to hold them to the same standards that we uh, have today and I have a daughter who's very absolute in her
Mm,
standings about it, and she will just cancel anybody. No, they weren't a
mm,
good person. And
mm.
so, um, hey, that's one perspective, and
Yeah.
I can't say that she's wrong. I was like, slavery under any grounds is bad.
Of
Slavery
course.
because somebody is a certain race takes it up to the next level, you know, um, thinking that you can buy and purchase another human being and then espouse a document that talks about inalienable rights of all people is, it's a jagged pill to swallow,
Yeah.
you know. So I get that. And at the same time, I'm like you. It's like, okay, I don't think Dan Aykroyd would do blackface today. You know what I mean?
No. I think he doesn't feel good about it probably,
Yeah, he's
like,
grown up with the rest of us.
yeah.
And the point of him doing the blackface was not to disparage black people, Jamaican people.
Yeah.
That whole scene and the whole setup was to show that everyone involved in this heist that they were trying to do was completely incompetent.
Yes.
They're so ignorant, Jamie Lee Curtis comes in dressed in German attire and claims she's Swedish, you know, and you know, the I think it's the
Yeah.
butler who calls her out. He's like, that's interesting that you're Swedish because you're wearing lederhosen, you know.
Right. Yeah.
so so you know, all of them are just, and even Eddie Murphy, who's acting like, you know, he's from straight from Africa,
Yeah.
as you know, an inner city con man from the US, he actually doesn't know what an African person would act like. So he's doing his ignorant
Of
portrayal of
course.
that as well. So everybody's bad at what they're doing, you know, and so that's where the comedy's supposed to come from. The comedy isn't supposed to be, oh, look how stupid Jamaican people are, you
Right.
know, with Dan Aykroyd's portrayal of a Jamaican person. And so I think the spirit of it is different. We still wouldn't excuse it today. You know,
Right.
we would say, no, I don't care what spirit you're doing it in.
Right.
Unacceptable, because we know the history. We're too savvy today.
We're
You
too
know what I
savvy.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you and I, we weren't savvy in the early 80s.
No.
We weren't savvy to the history of blackface and you know, everything that went on in our nation's history and in vaudeville and all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So this leads me to why I quit my play.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not, this
Wow.
was the lead in. When I accepted a role in the play, I hadn't read the whole script. And had I read the whole script, had I been familiar with the script, I would have never even auditioned for the play. There is a character in the play. Once again, the spirit of it is not to demean someone. It's a light comedy. It's not trying to say anything. One of the aspects of the comedy is that no one is who they claim to be, um, except for the one detective who is from the get go who he says he is. He's the only guy. Everybody else is in disguise. Well, one of these people who's in disguise is in blackface. She is a white woman portraying a Creole Haitian. And you can say there's light skinned Creole, and that's very valid. But the script is one of the very first interactions of the entire play is someone calling her native, and she corrects them and says, I'm not native, I'm Creole. Her skin's dark. Well, the main plot point of that character, turns out, is that she doesn't allow anyone to touch her. But people find like this oily substance on things. Anyway, turns out she's darkened her skin, right, with this oily makeup or whatever it is. And she's found out when the main detective guy says, come outside with me, but it's raining, and she refuses to come outside because she knows it will ruin her blackface. Had I known any of that was in the script, no way I'm doing this play,
Right.
right? Now, to the credit of the two people who were directing the play, they were not going to put blackface on anybody,
Yeah.
right? However, they were going to leave in all the references to it. So people started quitting, especially the person who they originally cast in that role. And then they started asking other people if they would come and do that role. And the original person who quit the role wrote them a very detailed, I've gotten to know this person now. I didn't know them prior, but now we're friends. Wrote them a very detailed way in which, hey, we could change this, but there's copyright issues, you
Right.
know. So anyway, I was very discouraged by the whole thing. Now they did start to make edits and start to take out a lot of the thing, and they basically edited out that whole plot point that was going to be gone from the play. But there were still all these like Haitian references where it's just like, obviously she's posing, you know, as a Haitian. She makes references to like jungle drums, voodoo, all this stuff. And it's just not cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just not cool. So anyway, push came to shove, and the rest of us, the when I say the rest of us, I mean about a third of the cast. We walked. There was a big long discussion the night that everything kind of came to a head, and those of us who were going to walk were kind of making our decision. And sweet people. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the
Right.
bus or make it sound like anybody's bad person or racist. But I would hear comments such as, "Well, what could we change it to that would be okay? Could she be Irish? Would that still be racist?" It's a white woman in the role, okay?
Right.
And somebody has to ask if it would be offensive for them to portray an Irish person rather than a Haitian person. So while I'm not calling anyone hateful or racist in a hateful way, there's also a level of ignorance,
Yes.
which is which is really the entire root of racism, isn't it?
Correct.
So even when person is well intentioned, they can still be ignorant, and by that ignorance, by definition, be racist,
Mm.
even without any hate in their heart.
Right.
So that's kind of it's still a big thing. Let me tell you,
Wow.
word has gotten out in this town. Word has
Oh,
gotten out big time in this town. It's a small town.
yes. Yes.
In a small town of maybe 40,000 or so, and you can imagine how small the theater community here is.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there's a lot of people involved in theater, and the theater is great here for such a small community. But yeah, there's a lot of
There goes Simon.
oh man. So certain of us might be blacklisted,
Yeah.
for being too woke and causing the theater. I mean, honestly, the things these things are so complicated, which is why I didn't walk right away. And I was kind of seeing how it would go. Okay, how, what kind of changes were they willing to do? What kind of, what can we do to correct this thing? But the pushback to correct it, was disheartening to me.
Yeah.
I will say. And not only that, but the attitude that it really didn't need corrected, but we'll do it for you people who are so woke. You know what
Mm.
I mean?
Yeah.
That was even more disheartening. And the fact that the play was chosen in the first place. How many scripts exist out there?
A lot, man.
So why of all the scripts out there, choose one that has this? Even if you were planning on completely taking out that character and saying, we're not even going to use that character, there's not even going to be a mention of that. Why this script that had it there in the first place? There's so many things, there's so many nuances. And one of the things that kept me, I'm aware of how little money there is to be made in theater.
Of course.
You shut down a production, that can really hurt a theater company. It can really hurt the theater who's counting on those receipts. So so there were so many levels that I was trying to navigate on, am I going to leave this production or am I going to stay in it? But ultimately I did not feel like it was doable, like
Yeah.
that we could all keep our integrity, that I wanted my name attached to this. And that's what, the rest of people quit. That's all, the same
Yeah.
conclusion we all had. It's like, none of us want our name on this,
Right.
you
The,
know.
the integrity piece is interesting to me because I've actually been thinking about this word and where we're at with that. So it sounds like you had a very nuanced view of it, and then you had a thoughtful response. and then you decided, okay, this is kind of more than what I'm willing to put up with. And this
Yeah, I
crosses
don't
an integrity line for me,
I don't put hard boundaries up on things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it, it's you have to go way far for me, to
Yeah.
find my boundaries. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm similar. Yeah.
I'm very forgiving. I have an
Of
open
course.
mind. So like when we watch Trading Places again, I see Dan Aykroyd in blackface. My response is what you said. I was like, I forgot about it. And then when I saw it, it was a little bit startling and a little bit
Yeah.
uncomfortable at first, and I had to think it through. And so much of my mind is on the intention behind
Yes.
something. So there was like two instances in my favorite TV show of all time, 30 Rock,
Yeah.
where they do blackface. The intention is always to show what an idiotic, stupid, ignorant person would do this. It is never to celebrate blackface,
Sure. Yeah.
or to demean black people with it. Well, they don't air those episodes anymore. There's two episodes, I
Yeah.
think, and they cut those out. They don't air them anymore. And one of them happens to be one of my favorite episodes, which is too bad. I was like, dang it, why do
Yeah.
they
I
have
know,
to have
right?
that in there? But that was the mature thing to do. It
Yeah.
was the, intelligent thing to do, was to say, all right, we can't air these with this subplot in there. And so anyway, it's just like we were saying before, it's like we're at a place now where it's like we're too smart and the audience is too smart.
Yes.
One of the things, one of the directors of the play, which is really one of the things that kind of pushed me out of it. And once again, this is a wonderful person. I like this person. I'm friends with this person. I plan on continuing to be friends with this person. Um, but one of the things they said was that a lot of the lines or the interactions of this character that was originally in blackface would go so quickly because of the pace of the show that the audience wouldn't have time to really, calculate what's really happening. And for me, that was so insulting
Yeah.
to the audience. I assume my audience is really smart. You know what I mean? Sometimes maybe I assume too much of my audience in
Mm.
that way, but I want my audience to be smart. I want them to get the joke and to get high level of humor. And so I just assume that they're going to do that. And for someone who's directing the show to assume they wouldn't, to assume that they wouldn't observe the nuances of what's really happening and be able to read between the lines and say, oh, that person's in blackface in the script, even if they're not on stage. Once again, it was another one of these like warning lights alerts that go on in my brain. I'm like, okay, I'm just, this isn't the production for me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And now thinking back about our previous episode, I'm like, this definitely makes sense. Like,
Yeah, because I told you that I had been
yeah.
talking to the directors
Right.
afterwards. There were so many things that were going on,
Yeah.
so many things. And somebody who the local theater awards here is called the Stanleys. And somebody who's on the Stanleys like committee saw me at the symphony on Sunday. And so they knew I was in the play, and so they were asking me, what happened? What? And you've heard me talk about it. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I'm not
No,
trying to like
not at all.
demonize anyone. So I'm glad when somebody comes up to talk to me about it. I'm not interested in gossip, elevating the drama. I want to diffuse it.
Yeah.
I want to be like, hey, and this is how I described it to that person. I said, it really boils down to a terrible miscalculation. That's really what it was. Nobody intended to do anything offensive. Nobody was trying to, you know, uh, hurt the community or cause drama in any way. They had done the play before 30 years ago. That's what happened. One of the
Right.
directors had been involved in the production in the early 90s, and it was a big hit. Well, lots of things in the 80s and 90s were big hits
That's true.
that would not go over today. And we were just
Right.
talking about it, Trading Places. That scene in Trading Places would never happen
No, they would
today.
never redo that. No.
Yeah. So we don't have to cancel Trading Places
No.
because we know the spirit that it was made in and the ignorance, that went along with it. And it wasn't an ignorance of hate or anything like that. It was just ignorance. So we can still look back on that movie with fond memories and not
Yeah.
be offended by it. But like you just said, if someone was to say, "Hey, we need to remake Trading Places," the white guy's not doing blackface.
No, not at all.
No.
I just don't think we should be killing people for stuff that happened a long time ago and not knowing who they are now or if the person's not alive, whatever. It's just like why are we giving this so much energy? In today's society, we know better. We're trying to do better, but to spend so much effort just like killing someone for the past. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done a lot of dumb things in the past, man. I don't want people crushing me for something I did when I was
Yeah.
20. Or you see with people with, I don't do it tweeting and all that stuff, but like somebody writes a terrible tweet when they're 15 and they're 30, and then some organization cancels them because of something they said a long time ago. They may not even be close to that person anymore, type of thing. It's just, it's a little much for me, you know?
Our ability to heal and move on as human beings is astounding.
Yeah,
It's been less than 100 years. It's been about 80 years since World War II,
right,
you know. I don't even think of Nazis when I think of Germany. You know
right.
what I
Of
mean? If somebody mentions
course.
Germany, Nazis aren't the first thing that come to mind. You know
No,
what I mean? Because we heal. When I think of Japan, I don't think of that imperialistic, kamikaze,
no,
ultimate loyalty to the emperor, to divine emperor, do anything for the divine emperor and commit war crimes and all these things. I don't think of that anymore. Japan has moved on. They're
right,
completely different. I mean, not completely different, but I'm saying
right,
governmentally and in the spirit that their community upholds themselves is completely different than World War
right.
II. So I don't think of that anymore. So we need to give everyone that grace, all of us,
Yes,
that kind of grace. And to me, it's just sad when we don't because you really miss out on a lot of stuff.
yeah,
You miss out on how good people are because of
yes,
mistakes they made.
most definitely. And the difference is when someone is spouting this crazy rhetoric and anti this and that stuff in today's society that knows better.
Yeah.
Now you're dealing with a different person at that point. It's like, okay,
Yes.
you have all the information. You know this is not right, and you're still doing it. What's happening here? Like, it's like,
It's like smoking and vaping, man.
right? It's
It's
just
just like the
you're
Surgeon
making a
General's
decision.
warning is on there. Yeah, you've made a decision to hurt yourself. And that's most of my you know, you know the thing is that's really surprising is that we are so global, but at the same time we're so regional and tribal still.
Yes,
And I keep on thinking that no matter how small the community or whatever, I just think, well, because of the internet, we're all global now.
yeah,
Well, that's not really the case,
yeah,
and it's not even the case for me who wants it to be like that. I'm trying to be like that, but I'm not, I'm not there. My brain is so full of ignorance, about other cultures and everything. And I'm just trying to learn.
right.
But, in order to learn, we have to assume we were wrong.
That's hard to do.
But that is the assumption you have to go into to learn anything.
Yeah,
You have to come into something with the assumption that you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the subject matter. Because if you go in there thinking you know it, you don't learn anything.
yeah,
You don't learn anything at all. So that's always, even when I'm in a situation where I know I'm going to disagree with somebody, you know, I'm trying to remind myself of that.
yeah.
It's like, he's like, Simon, you don't know everything. Actually, one of the things I'm very sarcastic with myself, so I'll say things to myself like, "Hey, be careful, you might learn something."
Yeah.
You know.
I didn't know you were sarcastic with yourself, Simon. I wasn't aware of that in this sarcastic comment that I made.
So you want to hear one of the also great points of this story of me quitting the play. It was the same night that I was trying to release the first episode of my podcast. So I was immediately quitting something and letting a lot of people down,
Okay.
and then starting something and probably also letting a lot of people down.
We should talk about this episode of your podcast, by the way. It's just fascinating. I listened to the entire thing and I was
Oh
like,
man.
this is my guy Simon, man. I gotta talk to him about this.
It was kind of therapeutic too. I actually recorded that podcast earlier in the day and then released it that evening,
Yeah.
you know. And in between, quit my play. You know what I mean?
What a
So it's
day.
just yeah. Um so it was a weird headspace to be in. I was telling my wife Shannon that I don't think I get overly emotional about, like quitting a play, things like that.
Hmm.
I've been doing artistic stuff long enough to say most of it doesn't work out, you
Mm.
know. And even when you see a project through all the way through and you complete it, it normally doesn't work out. That's just the way of it, man.
Yeah. Sounds like Tom Hanks quote. I mean, this is a good link to the another episode we talk
That's
about Tom
right.
Hanks, and he said
Yeah,
it's a miracle that movies get made.
it is.
Literally. And he said, and most of it's not good, even when it's made. And I was like,
Yeah.
I agree with him on that.
Yes. Yes. Very much so. And it leaves the audience wondering why
Why?
wasn't this better? you
Yes.
know but most of us who are asking that question, including myself sometimes, well, I would say most of us who are asking that question aren't involved in artistic endeavors,
Yeah.
so we don't have that experience. But even from my perspective, who I've spent all my adult life in artistic endeavors that most of them have failed, at least to one extent or another, whether they failed my expectations or they failed, just as a piece of art or whatever it is, they failed, So I always like to tell the story about the first album I made in Portland. I was like 24 years old, spent a year on it, spent like $8,000 or $10,000 going to the studio, getting it
Yeah.
made, threw it in the trash. Complete and utter failure.
Yeah.
That's the way of it. Them's the breaks.
Them's
And
the
it
breaks.
and it disappoints so many people. I made so many people. I don't know if I want to say angry, but they felt emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. There
Let's
was
put
some
it that way.
emotions there. Yeah.
It didn't ruin all the friendships that I had with those people, but it ruined some.
Yeah.
It did. And so it was, and then I was the bad guy. I was the villain. I was the one who said, no, can't release this. It's not good enough.
All right.
And so here I am again, Florence, Alabama, 20 years later, doing the same thing.
He's got a track record.
Yeah. Oh
Simon,
man.
you failure.
I know. I know it, man. But that's just the way of it. And I think, I just heard this statistic the other day. It's like 8 out of 10 restaurants fail within the first year or
Oh,
something like
yeah,
that.
for sure.
That's just that's just life. Things
Yeah.
fail, they flop, they go wrong,
Yeah.
and that's just how it
Like a lot of the
goes.
times, and I think people just aren't willing to accept it. There's so many stories. I was like, I got to talk to Simon about this. There's a rich amount of information out there that happened between the last recording. And it was, I don't know if you heard of this story. I forgot what university, where like an organic chemistry class. And all the students and the parents railed against the university because they said this professor's class was too hard.
Oh
So when they
yeah, actually,
fired the guy.
yeah. I was
Now,
actually just
I
listening to
took
that about
organic
that.
chemistry in college. I got a C. It was very difficult,
Yeah. I
but
think
I never
everybody who's
complained to
gone
my
into the medical
parents.
profession have said that.
Right. But I never complained to my parents that, like, wow, this is too hard. I understood the fact that if I can't do this, then I shouldn't be doing this,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
I'm an adult now. I got to have my own study habits. And I think the point of it is like we're having a hard time accepting failure in our current society as a normal part of existence. Like sometimes your best is not good enough. Sometimes it isn't, you know?
That that is a top-down situation.
Yes.
Think of the last election. If I lose, it's because it's rigged.
Right.
When the leader of your entire nation, this is we're going to get political for a second, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Um but that was my attitude from the get-go with Donald Trump, okay? I mean, he could put forth amazing policies. He was still going to be a bad leader.
Right.
I mean, and the policies that he put forth, they could have all worked. Like the economics, we could have had an economic boom. We
Right.
didn't, nothing, but I'm just saying, he could have fixed all of our foreign relations
Right.
problems, but he couldn't. There's no way a person with that personality can do that.
Right.
It's just the wrong personality to lead a democracy.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's just
Exactly.
crazy. He's good at conning. He's
Yeah.
give him that, and there's a level of appreciation I have for the con artist. I really
Sure.
do. I
Yeah.
you know so um so it's not like I don't appreciate him at all. But what's the first thing I heard President Biden talk about when he came into office? He was addressing his new staff, and he said there will be anyone who's heard using disparaging language will be fired immediately.
Right.
You couldn't do a bigger 180 than that
Of
from the
course.
previous administration.
Yeah.
So the acceptance of failure, the acceptance of I can fail, that is completely opposite of Trumpism.
Yeah.
Whereas we can't fail. If we fail, it's because they cheated,
Right.
which is just so mind-boggling, to me. It's just like,
You're hedging the bet. You're saying if this happens, then that's the reason why I lost.
yeah,
We have just a very fluid relationship with failure. It's just like, well, I lost because this happened. It's never because of your own stuff. It's
yes,
always because of something else. And listen, if you fail a course in college, you fail a course in college.
yes,
It happens. It could happen. Like I failed a couple of entry exams for a different profession I was thinking of doing, and I just couldn't pass it. You know what I did? I moved
yeah.
on and I did what
There
I'm
you
doing
go.
now.
There
That's what
you
I
go.
did. And I didn't talk to my parents about it at all. I didn't do I just handled it myself because I'm at school on my own. I need to start making my own decisions. And some of
Yeah,
that decision is going to
yeah,
be bad. Like, it's
yeah.
okay. Like,
Uh, to me, I mean, you said it all right there. I love the saying "any given Sunday."
yeah.
On any given Sunday, Donald Trump can be president, and then he can lose the presidency.
Right.
That's the whole idea on any given Sunday. And you would think that all of the Trump supporters, who are mostly football fans, I assume. Sorry, that
Yeah.
might be that might
Maybe.
be that might be insensitive of me, but I'm living in Alabama and everybody's a football
That's
fan
right.
and a Trump
Roll
supporter,
Tide.
Yeah. So so that's my reality I'm in right now. But I'm just saying, it's like everybody knows that on any given Sunday, the best team can lose to the worst team.
That's right. That's
I mean,
exact. And the Lakers lose all the time, so don't worry about it, Simon. That's they
exactly.
just it doesn't matter. Every
Exactly.
night the Lakers have lost, and they're probably going to be the ninth seed again this year. So like,
Oh, I know it. I know it. I have no faith in the Los
just
Angeles
let it
Lakers
go, man.
whatsoever.
Just let it
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean, well, I mean, luckily that's, I just appreciate sport. We've talked about
right, of
this where it's just
course.
like, yeah, it's nice when the Lakers win because I've
Yeah,
been a Laker fan since I was like 8, so it's nice when they win, but when I see the other team play so well and beat them, I'm not sitting around saying, "Oh, they suck and they only
right.
won because of this. Oh, the refs were terrible." No, the other team won. They played better.
Yeah, it's the ultimate dividing line. Sports. There's a clear outcome.
Yes.
And for some reason, we accept that in sports. Like, okay, sure, maybe there's a bad call here and there, and you go, maybe that could have tipped it, but overall, people go, hey, they lost, and we can't seem to accept that in other parts of society for some reason. It's
The
strange to me.
the best part of any sport is watching the losers and the winners shake hands.
Yeah,
That's the best part.
that's great.
When you see losers and winners after the match or the competition, whatever sport you're watching, hug, shake hands, say good game. We're talking basketball, so we're gonna butt pat,
Yeah,
gonna
exactly.
give the
Yeah,
other team a little spank.
yeah,
And we're gonna say great game. And nothing is more distasteful than when you saw those kids who lined up to shake hands after the game, who refused, who like
yeah.
went through the whole line with their arms
Arms
folded.
crossed. Yeah,
It's like you looked at those guys, you thought you guys are such losers.
yeah. Take it
I
on the chin,
mean,
man.
yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. I think as a father, we come to appreciate losing a bit more.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? Because you
yeah.
want to see your kids succeed.
Of course.
When my kid outsmarts me, maybe we're like playfully giving little digs at each other or something, we're just joking on each
Yeah.
other's, and when my kid lays a line on me, that I'm like, I can't top that.
Yeah, it's funny, right?
Oh, I'm a proud papa, man. I'm such a proud papa.
I've
It's
gone
so
pretty
great.
deep in my parenting, Simon. Like I've been very vulnerable with my daughter. Like there was maybe a couple weeks ago, and she was it was something was going on, and I told her she let me down on something
Mm,
she had done, and it devastated her. I mean,
mm.
let's just put out there. I'm not gonna mix words. I told her that straight up, and she lost it. But then I gave her a hug. I said, "But listen, I know I've let you down plenty of times too." And that
There
happens
you
in
go.
life. Somebody's going to let you down, even your dad. I said, I know I could be a better dad sometimes. And sometimes I make the choice not to be a better dad because of whatever things I'm into, I'm watching a show or whatever is
Yep.
going on. And
Yeah.
I said, you deserve that honesty from me that I could be better sometimes. Like, that's the type of life I want to live with people. It's
Right.
like, like I just blew it.
Yeah.
Like, right? I'd rather somebody tell me they just blew it, they didn't want to do it. Just tell me the truth. I'll be okay with the truth. I'm never okay with a lie, but I'm always cool with the truth, no matter how bad it feels.
You and I are a little different that way.
Yeah.
I want people to lie to me all the time. I
Simon,
just want them to
enough.
tell me how good I am. It's like, I love you, Simon. You're great. Everything you do is
No,
wonderful.
Simon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I
Keep it
appreciate
coming.
that.
Keep it coming.
Yeah.
I do want to hurt my alternate reality. That was like the most honest side. I was like, wow, this has gotten different. I was like,
Well, I mean, that's the whole point of the podcast, right? Is
yeah,
to be brutally honest.
yes,
And I've gotten such wonderful feedback from it. I've had people call me or message me and be like, "Man, I'm tearfully contemplating, what I just heard."
yeah,
And it's really funny. To me, it's hilarious because I don't take myself seriously, right?
yeah,
You know me. It's
yeah,
like I could say the most serious or profound thing. Once in a while, something like that might escape my lips,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
don't take it seriously. I'll immediately undercut it because I know who I am,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But when I listened back to the podcast, of course, before airing it, because I was like, a lot of production went into it
Of
with my
course.
little piano and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to make sure everything was good and all that kind of thing. And so when I said the last line, which is something like when I'm at the window waiting for purpose to come into waiting at the window, waiting for purpose to come into my life, that's when I'm filled with self-loathing.
Yeah.
And when I heard that myself speak that back to me, I almost started crying
Wow.
because the truth of that statement, as bleak as it might sound, this is, I'm not writing a fiction podcast. These are the thoughts of my mind that I'm trying to get out, because it's really difficult, as we've talked about before, to find anybody who can have these conversations with,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And and I think for folks like you and I, you have this amazing podcast where you're constantly talking to people, and I feel like
Yeah.
you have this marvelous opportunity to constantly express yourself and ideas and hear other people express themselves and have that feed into your own self-expression, and now you're expressing yourself better and better, and all these kind of things. It's a beautiful thing. Well, maybe it was jealousy and I was like, I want that, but I don't want anybody to interrupt me. So I'm gonna
That was honest. See, that's the best. That encapsulates what I want from people. I don't want to be interrupted. That's why I don't talk to
Oh, yeah. No guess.
anyone. No
No
guessing. I hate
guess.
guessing with people's mind. I'm
Oh
like, just tell me.
man.
Like,
Yeah. So, oh man.
oh, that was
So
funny.
yeah. Well, so I just want to get these thoughts out there, and most of them, it's just hard to find that venue.
Yes.
It's hard to find that venue where you can actually and this will sound super corny, but speak your truth,
Hmm.
right? And I don't want to pretend that there's all these alternate truths out there, but what I want to say, maybe speak our personal philosophy.
I like that. That's better to me. Your
Yeah.
personal philosophy. Yeah,
And the word philosophy means love of wisdom,
that's right.
right? And that's what drives me in my life,
Yeah.
is that love of wisdom. And wisdom is very complicated. It's not easy. It's very nuanced. That's why there's not a lot of it in the world.
It's true, man.
Seriously,
That's true.
we have a lot of information, but not a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
You can Google anything except wisdom.
Mm. Wow, I like that. I'm gonna have to meditate on that. Well, the other thing too is gets deep. This gets deep. This is like a personal mission of mine. You don't know this about, okay, people, Simon doesn't know this about what we're doing.
Uh-oh.
I
All
have an
right, here we
alternative
go. All
thing with
right, I'm
this,
ready for it.
is to do this as long as possible with you. And also, it's a love letter about our lives to other people, of
Oh, that's
saying, hey,
beautiful.
when we're gone, our digital, you can watch and hear us forever.
Yeah.
We'll always be here. And for my daughter, one day when I'm gone, she can always have a piece of me through these videos and the audio.
Yeah.
And she can see all the people I interacted with in my life and the whole thing. And this is part of my life. This is a key part of my life. So I
Yeah.
wanted to live on beyond me, type of
How
thing.
how old is she now? She's 9?
11. She's
11.
11.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, she's probably a lot like my kids. She's very interested in you and what you're
Yes.
doing,
Yes.
but maybe not to the extent where she's ready to listen to every episode and try to
Correct.
grapple with everything that's happening, right?
Yeah.
I love, the other week, my it's actually my daughter Adriana's 17th birthday today. And she was saying the other week, and she's big into music, she's a teenager, so she
Yeah.
always has headphones on. She's always singing along to her bands and everything. So anyway, she turns to me in the kitchen one of these evenings and she says, Dad, It's like, what? She said, sometimes I forget how many awesome albums that you've made, you know,
Yes.
because they don't sit around listening to come their dad. They're not going to sit around listening to their dad,
Yeah.
they're going to
Yeah.
listen to the hottest thing that's out there. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I appreciated that. I appreciated that, all right, maybe I'm not her favorite artist, all right, I could deal with that. No
Yeah.
problem. But once in a while, like you just said, and especially probably as they get older, they'll
Yeah.
be like, oh man, dad did some stuff, didn't he?
Yeah.
It might not even sound very impressive to them right now that I
Right.
did like 12 albums in around a year.
Yeah.
Maybe this podcast I'm doing, maybe they'll be like, who knows? Dad's kind of weird. He sounds kind of weird when he's talking into a microphone because he's doing some theatrical thing with his voice or whatever.
Yeah.
But hopefully, as they get older. So actually about 10 years ago, I started to write a book for my kids. Have I ever told you about that?
I don't think so.
All right. So I started to write this book and I had all these things. And I had written like 5 chapters of this book, and it wasn't like a typical autobiography. I wasn't telling them, oh, I grew up in Alaska and this is what
Yeah.
happened. No, it was my thoughts on important things. So I had a huge chapter just about the subject of love and all the different kinds of expressions of love and how I felt about those things at the time. Well, okay, I went back and I was rereading it and I was like, I have to throw all this away
Here we go again.
because I've changed.
That's
I've
right.
evolved.
That's right.
These aren't, it's not, I mean, some of it still holds true, but some of it I'm like, that's not me anymore.
Yeah.
That's, and I'm really happy about that. I think I've progressed as a human being through this search for wisdom that I've
Yes.
been on. So that was at once kind of deflating, that I have to like, oh, well, I have to throw all this crap away. But at the same time, it was elevating because I was like, oh, I've
Yeah.
grown a lot in 10 years. 10 years has changed me immensely.
Of course.
The recognition of that, though, is like, I think sometimes we forget, we assume we are the person we were. And
Yeah.
this is one of my favorite questions to ask people. Do you think you're the same person you were in high school? You'd be surprised how many people think will say essentially yes.
Wow. That's honestly, I hate to say this, that seems disappointing. I'm like,
You know,
I
I
mean, I don't know.
I but the thing about that is that I don't think it's true of anyone. I think
Yeah, there's no
I
way.
I think that's self-perception.
I agree with that. I think so.
I
Maybe
think
there's
the
a
person
desire to want that because you really enjoyed that version of your life so much.
yeah.
It's some people like, you hold the old term that was their highlight. High school
Yeah.
was their highlight or
Oh
college.
man.
I'm like,
What a
no way.
terrible
Definitely
highlight.
not a thing for me.
What a yeah.
I hope that would never be the case for me in my life.
I'll be 45 over 15 any day of the week, my
Any
friend.
day. Give it
Oh,
any day.
yeah.
Like,
There's not there's not a single moment in high school that I would trade for
you
for any moment in my
couldn't
adult
pay me to
life.
go back to
Yeah,
that time,
it's just
man.
not. And I had a pretty good time. You
Yeah.
know, I was a pretty popular guy. I was pretty popular with the ladies. Yeah, I
Yeah.
had a good time.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I didn't have it, but I was also I didn't realize it at the time, but I was also suffering from depression. I didn't even know it. You just add depression to teenage hormones to all this other stuff
Yeah.
that's going on in your life during that time. So as much fun as I was having, it was also horrible
Yeah.
because things that I can deal with easily today, I couldn't handle as a teenager,
Yeah.
and that's just growing up.
That's growing up.
So so I never want to go back to that place where I can't handle my emotional, and I'm not cognizant enough to understand what I'm going through and to be able
Right.
to work through it in a mature way. Boy, yeah. No thanks, man.
No, no.
I
I think,
also listened to
yeah.
a lot of Van Halen back then, and I
Oh
don't want
my
to go back
gosh.
to that
You
either.
don't want to go back to that?
I, I
Like,
I have a real deep appreciation for Van
I
Halen.
do
Don't get me
too,
wrong.
man.
Don't get me
Like,
wrong. But I was listening to Van Halen like all the time. I mean, not all the time. I had
yeah,
like everybody. I listened to a
sure.
lot of stuff. I was just telling somebody actually it was my daughter Adriana this morning. I was driving her to school and we were talking about racism. We were talking about stuff like this and I said, somebody asked me when I was kind of like 12, 13 or so if I wanted to be black.
Oh wow.
I was wearing all my Lakers stuff.
Yeah.
I listened to rap music all the time. Most of my favorite artists were rap artists. And then there was like CCR, Van Halen, and the Rolling
Yeah, right.
Stones and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but I listened to a lot of rap at the time. But I just thought that was so interesting at the time, and I still do today, to assume that because I was wearing sports paraphernalia and I was listening to LL Cool J,
Yeah.
that I wanted to be black.
Wow.
And I was like, I mean, I wouldn't mind, but it's not like a life goal,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
That's interesting. They had that question. I mean, it's
Yeah, just a
uh,
really interesting thing. And
yeah,
that goes back to that ignorance that is
of course.
racism.
Yeah.
It's not that that person, I don't think, had any animosity for black
Yeah.
people. They were just seeing that maybe I was appreciating things that were stereotypically
Yeah.
black.
Right. They thought it was part of the culture and they're like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you must be really into this," like
Yeah. And I was like, well, I have no intention on changing the pigmentation of my skin,
I mean, you're not
but
Sammy Sosa here. I mean, it's like
yeah.
like Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah, but I just think that's such an interesting thing. And now we call that cultural appropriation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apparently I was appropriating, your culture, right? When I was listening to LL Cool
Yeah.
J. It's like, I mean, come on, man. Can't I just enjoy music?
My culture, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Like,
That's what I'm saying, man. It
yeah.
sounds so silly. I
Yeah.
mean, that sounded racist when I said your culture, I mean,
Right.
it sounded
I
terrible, right?
it's just kind of like back, maybe it was in the 80s, early 90s when, I think it was like cross colors. Remember cross colors? Remember
Yeah,
that
yeah,
gear?
yeah.
I had some cross colors gear. I would never wear anything like that now. But
Yeah.
there was this big movement in the black community. It's like, Mother Africa, back to Africa. And I always be like, well, you don't even know anything about Africa. First of all, it's a continent, not a country. I was like, second of
Exactly.
all,
Yeah.
like they don't
Where in Africa
identify
are you
with
planning
you.
on going?
I know.
You
I'm
want to
like,
go to
where do
South
you
Africa?
like? Have you been to Ghana? You've been to like
Yeah.
like you don't even know anything.
Yeah.
Black people, American black people, and Africans, there's not a lot in common there. There just isn't. I'll be real.
No.
There's just not a lot in common there. It's almost just a lost lineage between
Yeah.
the two people, which is what I think also is part of some of the terrible plight of people of my ethnicity. That's different than other ethnicities. Is there's a linkage between maybe Italian Americans in Italy and Greek Americans in
Yes.
Greece and
Yeah.
Asian Americans in Asia. There's always been a link. Black people have this very large gap of missing
Yes.
lineage, which is why
Yes.
we also have a lot of strife with it. But I'd be like, our culture is not Africa. It's not. Like,
Yeah.
no one here knows anything about the continent of Africa. That is black generally. Like,
No. It is really interesting. It's like and this might sound racist, so be prepared. But
this is the racist show. Did you know
yeah.
that? This is what this episode's about. Okay.
But I've always kind of chuckled at African American, just that term.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
don't identify as that.
just because I'm not British American
No.
or German or Scandinavian American. I
You
mean,
do
these
like a
are all
Viking though.
things in
You do
my
look a little like a
I do.
Viking
Yeah, yeah,
American.
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like,
You know. I mean, but wouldn't it be racist of me to say that you looked like a Nigerian?
I know. I'd be
That would
like,
be, it'd be crazy,
no.
right? So so these kinds of things, but I also understand trying to like you were just saying, trying to reestablish that link.
Sure.
And I get that. And, you know, I was talking to somebody in the gym yesterday, and he loves to talk about how he's German.
Oh, okay.
It's like, well, you're not really German. I mean, you've lived in the United States your whole life, you know, but and the fact that you have to keep saying you're German just shows how non-German you are. If you were as German as you thought you were, you would never have to tell me that, you know.
Uh,
So I'm just like, you know, my ancestry, I have a lot of German ancestry. I don't go around telling people, well, you know, I'm German, so this is why I do this. But he likes to do that. He likes to talk about, you know, the way that he analyzes things is because he's German.
oh,
And
okay.
I'm just like, well, I think you're just old.
Yeah. I could say I'm German then. I mean, I was born there. I've lived there twice. I mean, I'm
There
not
you go.
German. I mean, it's
See,
like
yeah, you know, that's what I'm saying. You know,
crazy.
I, one of the things I love about being American is to not claim anything.
Yeah.
It's like my lineage is so, you know, befuddled with all
Yeah.
kinds, sprinklings of all kinds of things, like most people's,
Like
right?
most people. Yeah.
Yeah, who've come from another, you know, there are places in the world where people are just straight up who, you know, that nationality with
Right.
very little intermingling, and that's cool too. But those of us who are the ancestors of imports, right?
Yeah. Talk about supply chain. I mean,
Yeah. We've got a real and man, one of the things I was telling my daughter this morning, Adriana, she was we were actually laughing about the idea of wanting to be, you know, another race or nationality.
yeah.
And I was saying, you know, I kind of get it though, because I lived in Brazil for 2 years. And when you see the combination of European, African, and Native American combined to such a beautiful
Hmm.
people, you're like, oh, wow. Yeah, I wouldn't mind being that.
Yeah.
But you know, pale and pasty is what I've got to
Pale and
work with,
pasty.
you know.
Pale and pasty.
No caramel beauty over here, man.
It's
It's
like sunny
all
and overcast. It's pale and pasty.
yeah. With a chance of oily.
Some chance. Yeah.
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 You know. But you know, it's so I love it when I see people who find that link to their past and
Yeah.
they embrace it. And I think that's really cool. And I love that 23andMe thing
Yeah.
where people can find those links. And I think that's especially moving when African American people who are
Yeah.
able to find, oh, I came from this part of Africa, you
Yeah.
know, this tribe and things like that. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah. That's the good side. The dark side is when people find out they have all these other kids and stuff. I'm like, I
Yeah,
seen a
yeah,
Dateline about that. I was like, what? I was like, it's
yeah.
crazy, man.
Oh man, you got the Herschel Walkers out there
Oh,
who are
okay. Oh, this is the Herschel Walker stuff's too much for me. It's almost too much for me. This is the casual integrity thing as
oh
well. And they're
yeah.
lying. The lying is so unbelievable. It's like we're
It,
okay with it. I think to me, one of the I like listening to Collar Cowherd, the Herd sports show.
yeah.
Every once in a while, he gets on like a little rant, and he's like, I'm
Every
cool with
once
a
in a
lot
while.
every about like politics. That's what I
Yeah.
meant. Sorry. And he
Yeah.
said, you know what, I'm really disturbed by in our country is this casual integrity and the acceptance of lying. Like this, just
Yes.
this accept. He
Yeah.
said it used to be if somebody, and you remember this, and we're old enough to know that, like if some major figure and it was became it exposed that they were a liar, they were done. It was like
Yes.
we're not. It almost doesn't matter anymore. It's like, oh, they're really a big liar, and we have all this evidence. They're like, well, are they on my side? Do they rep? Okay, it's okay. It's okay. That is troubling to me. I agree with him on that. That's really troubling to me.
It is very troubling. And sometimes it breaks my heart when progressives cancel their own. And it's not because I'm some huge progressive. You and I
Right.
know that
We've
about each other.
established this.
We're
Yeah.
very, yeah. But oh, what's his face? His name just flew out of my head. He did Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live, and he became a
Oh my
senator,
gosh. What's this?
Minnesota
Oh, Al
senator.
Franken.
Al Franken,
Al
thank you.
Franken. Yeah.
A man of seemingly immense integrity who used to be a comedian and would do a lot of, kind of inappropriate humor.
Yeah.
And some of that inappropriate humor was photographed. And he immediately stepped down from the Senate, you know, even though he didn't actually, to my knowledge anyway, actually physically do
Right.
anything, but he was photographed pretending, you know, which was enough for the integrity of his position that he and his colleagues felt like it was appropriate for him to step down.
Right.
And that broke my heart a little bit because I think he was just such an amazing senator.
Yeah, I thought
Uh,
so too.
so, but but that's my compliment to progressives is that you'll my compliment to conservatives is that they are extremely loyal no matter what that guy did.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
No matter what.
when Donald Trump said he could go to Times Square and shoot somebody
Mhm.
and still win the election, that is what I'm talking about right
Yeah.
there. I don't. He tells a lot of lies, but that one was
That was
true.
true. Yeah.
Progressives can't do that, and that's my compliment to them. That
Yeah.
yeah, progressives, they're just people. They
Sure.
do all kinds of mistakes. Some of them are liars. Some of them are cheaters. Some, all the things. But when it comes out, boy, do they cancel those people.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton doesn't. You don't find him on the campaign trail. Supporting candidates.
Right.
They don't want to have anything to do with him. He's that guy who disgraced the Oval Office.
Right.
I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think we need a lot more of that on both sides.
Yes.
A lot more of
Yes.
saying, we don't want to have anything to do with this guy. I don't care how conservative or how progressive they are and I am. If they are a Bill Clinton or a Donald Trump and they can't keep themselves acting appropriately in the
Yeah.
office they hold, I don't want to have them representing me.
Even if it hurts, even if it
Even
hurts your chances, you should have integrity about it.
yes, even if it means you're going to lose the election.
That's
And
right.
we see that on the conservative side with somebody like a Liz Cheney,
Right.
lost her election.
Mm-hmm.
I was so disappointed in that.
Right.
That was an opportunity for conservatives in Wyoming to show that they had integrity too.
Yeah.
Failed the test.
Failed the test.
Failed it miserably. Not trying to judge you all individually, Wyoming residents, but as a whole, as a group, you failed the test.
Yes.
And there's just yeah, nothing against conservatives. There's good conservatives. Murkowski, Romney.
Completely. Yeah.
There are representatives with real integrity, not perfect people, just like the rest of us,
Mm-hmm.
but they have integrity for the office they hold, and they won't support somebody or somebody's policies, even if that makes them unpopular.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I just,
There's not enough of that. That's my problem with it. There needs to be. It's so. I got in this big discussion. I'm on a committee for this big fitness organization. We have this huge conference every year in Vegas and all this stuff. And we sat down and we were talking about like, hey, kind of analogous in our industry, we have a real image problem in fitness and wellness. We have like a real big issue of like, we're not moving the needle and more people actually participating in physical activity movement. I said, but look at what we're offering at these conferences: abs and assets, booties and barbells. We're doing the We're doing the ass grabbing and the skin selling business. That's I said, you know what we need to do? We need to hurt ourselves and pare back, even if that means less revenue for the conference and maybe less presenters. If we want to be taken, be more legitimate, we have to have a better line of integrity.
Man.
And people aren't willing to do that. It feels like in this society, they're like, will it help me win? If it helps
Yeah.
me win, I will literally forego all of my values as long as it makes me win. That's
Yeah.
troubling to me.
That's very troubling. And that is so interesting because I was literally pondering my previous experience as a physical
Mm-hmm.
trainer, just this morning. And I was thinking
Yeah.
about this exact thing because I
Oh
had been
no,
a
our mind is
trainer.
syncing up.
I
What is happening?
know, it's
This is weird.
crazy.
No, we've been doing this too long.
It's gonna be Freaky Friday here soon, man. So I was training at Crunch, and I actually like the Crunch facilities and their basic mindset. They have Olympic weight stations, they
Yeah.
kind of mix it up and they try to appeal to serious athletes and the casual gym goer
Yeah.
alike. And most gyms don't do that. They go for one or the other.
That's right.
So I appreciated that about them. And when I was training with them, at least at my gym, I had free reign. How I wanted to train my clients, how I wanted to do things, as long as my clients were happy, successful, and they could see that, I was doing a good job, they were totally hands off with me. Really appreciated that. So then another gym actually recruited me and made a lot of promises. And I was really excited because their facility it sounded like it was going to be off the charts. And I'm sure it was. It wasn't completed at the time. Anyway, so I went to go work for them. And at first, they let me do my thing, right? And then they got new management came in and they saw me. I'll give you an example of one of the things they saw me doing. At the time, I was training somebody for the Scottish Highland Games.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome athlete, big, tall, lean, handsome guy. Um, and I had never trained anyone for the Scottish Highland Games before. This was my first time doing it. And that's a really niche thing, you
Yes,
know.
very much.
So when the guy approached me about it, I said, listen, I'm going to research the Scottish Highland Games, all the events and stuff like that. I'm going to put a program together, and then you and I are going to go through that program together. And he was so excited for that. And we were very competitive. This guy's like 10 years younger than
Yeah.
me, and so, when he would see me like throw on another 90 pounds above what he's doing, he was like, oh man, okay, I got to get stronger.
Right.
And so it was great like that. Well, then this new management comes in. They said, you can't train with your clients anymore.
Mm.
You have to just train them. You
Yeah.
can't be training at the same time. And I was like, what are you talking about? I gave all this pushback. They started calling me a lone wolf, and that lone wolves couldn't be a part of this thing, because we're a team, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, you know what? Y'all have a good day. and that's when I stopped being a personal trainer, because here's what they wanted me to do. This is my long thing of just getting into what they wanted me to do. They had one of the machines that you stand on, it measures all your body fat,
Yeah.
you do all the measurements, you do all this stuff. All that stuff is all well and good, right? But the only focus was on body fat. We're just
It's
trying to
crazy.
help people get their body fat down. And just as you were just talking in your last episode about, diet myths and stuff like
Yeah, the
that,
weight
health
loss and
myths.
exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Body fat is not a good determiner of health.
No.
It's just not. Uh, Nothing could be worse than judging somebody on their BMI.
I know. That's crazy.
It is insane. I mean, my experience with that was going in to get health insurance and having a nurse put me on a scale and take my height and tell me that I was overweight.
Right.
And I looked at her And at that time, I was in really good shape. And I sounded super egotistical when I said this, but here's exactly what I said. I said, "Excuse me, nurse, look at me."
Look at me.
Yeah, I am not going to be charged more for my health insurance because I've dedicated myself to becoming the best athlete that I can be at this stage in
Yeah.
my life. And I will not be docked for that.
This is
So she's
great.
like, okay, so now she's forced into having to take my actual measurements. She measured my waist and then my
Yeah.
chest and all this kind of
Right.
stuff. It's like, oh yeah, your chest is like 10 inches bigger than your waist. So I guess we have to say you're in better shape than
It's
the
maddening,
height
man.
and weight.
Yes. So
you know,
maddening,
I mean, it's just crazy what people think health is.
It's a whole it's what I do mostly in talking and stuff. I mean,
But to your point, that's an industry-led problem.
it's an industry-led problem. Correct. We got to be willing to hurt ourselves to have a different perception. And I think I think of movies, movies is our cover for Simon and I talking to each other. Everybody I think knows this at this point.
Yeah.
Like we really do like movies a lot.
Yeah.
But it's like I also think the movie industry needs to hurt itself because all it's doing is recycling things from the past or
Yes.
just doing superhero movies. Okay, at some point you may need to have original thought. Or
How
people aren't
dare
going to the
you?
movie theaters because the movies suck. That's why. It's like
Yeah.
most of the art is failing, like we just said.
Yes.
So you may
Yes.
have to hurt yourself on the bottom line a little bit to get better quality. And I
Yeah.
think politically and wrapping that into is we're just not willing to hurt ourselves right now to say, you know what, we may need a different perspective, a legitimate third party. We may
Yeah.
need something else. Or just like you're on this team or that team. It's disgusting, actually, to me.
It
It's
really is.
disgusting.
My wife asked me, I told you about my last Sunday school that
Yeah.
I taught with Isaiah and how that went, which was not
Yes.
well. There's about 3 out of maybe, I don't know, 30 or 40 people who received it well, and then everybody else was complaining about it. It sounds like,
There's a pattern with you, man.
yeah, I know. Burn every bridge. That would be my sound of music. Burn every bridge. You know. um,
uh,
but so Shannon asked me, he's like, why do you bother? And I think I might have told you, that I said I'm in their heads now.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is
But
great.
but that's the idea of integrity, is that integrity eventually burns a hole in somebody's skull.
I
Is
love
that,
that.
you know, it's the earworm, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you hear it and there's something about that that's right. I don't want it. I don't like it because it disagrees with my
Mm,
worldview at this moment in time. Oh, but there's something about it I can't ignore. That's integrity.
yeah. Mm,
And I'm willing to be ostracized in my faith, my community, whatever it is, so that I can say truth,
yeah.
and I'm very comfortable with that at this point in my life, which I
Yeah.
think is maybe a character flaw actually on my part. Yeah,
Not a bug.
because yeah. It's like maybe I should care more about what people think. And there is a part of me, and here's me being very honest. When I was gonna quit that play, I didn't want to be blacklisted. I want to do more plays. I mean, so there's that selfish part of me that
Yeah.
says, okay, am I willing to do this so that people think I'm a team player and they'll cast me in another show? Well, I guess the answer is no,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, and that's integrity. All right,
That's
right. I
integrity.
guess I'm tooting my own horn over here,
Yeah,
but
come on, Simon.
but hey, here's what I'm going to say though. I was not the first to walk on that play. There are
Mm,
people who had more integrity than I did.
that's
And
encouraging, actually.
yeah, so I was not the leader of this
Mm,
exodus. All right.
yeah.
So I don't want to paint some picture like I was. All right. I was more kind of, like I said, I was talking privately to the directors and stuff, trying to see how we could course correct, trying to see how, what could be done, all this kind of stuff. I'm not a cancel culture guy,
Yeah.
you know. I'm
Neither,
I'm
neither am
I'm
I.
I'm very patient. I'm very understanding. I want to see what we can do, but then it's just, then you figure out at some point you're just like, all right, I guess we can't. I guess we
I guess
can't.
we
And
can't. Yeah.
that's why I'm politically independent. That's why I'm not in a
Hmm.
play right now.
It's right.
you know?
I actually think a lot more people are like that. They're just not willing to admit it. They don't want to come out as being like, oh, wishy washy, but I have no problem with that. I have no stake on either side. I will not be coerced into doing something that just because the masses told me on others, I will not do that. I will
Yeah.
stand in my personal philosophy and I'll take the team hit, whatever that means from that. I told my wife this all the time. I'm like, I'm willing to go on the sword, man. Like, I'm like, that's why I don't
Yeah.
care what I put out on my podcast. Like, I don't go, oh, I'm this fitness guy. I can't talk about sex and
Yeah.
about a lady coming on talking about gangbangs. I'm like, uh, listen, that's what she talks about. I found it interesting. It's not that I'm doing it. I'm not doing that, but I'm just saying I find it interesting that other people are. And if
Yes.
people don't like that, just turn it off then. Don't listen to it. I mean, it's like,
I was talking to somebody just this morning, actually. Once again, we were just talking about we were talking about religious stuff, actually.
yeah.
But one of the things I was saying was that if we're not curious enough and serious enough to learn the history and the culture of the Jewish nation, and
Mm-hmm.
Christians have no business reading the Old Testament.
Right.
One of the things I said was that it's not the Old Testament, it's the Jewish Bible.
Right.
And if all you're going to do is read it from a Christian's perspective, an American Christian perspective from the year 2022, then you have no business telling anyone what that scripture means. You
Right.
have no business.
Yeah.
So that's my first question to anybody who tells me, "Oh, this scripture means this." I'll say, "What's the historical context of this
That's
scripture?"
exactly
Nine
right.
times out of 10, they have no idea what is going on.
No, they don't know the archaeological evidence. They don't understand any of the theological aspect, none of it.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're going to believe in something, you should have a good working knowledge of it on all aspects. I
exactly.
mean, and that's the problem with a lot of politics and things is once you ask someone to explain themselves generally, it completely breaks down their reasoning behind in being into someone because no one
Yes.
actually asks people why they're into stuff. They never
Yeah.
ask. That's
Yeah.
why I like to do these podcasts. What the hell are you doing? What I want to understand this. Like I'm making it a big thing in 2023 to try to talk to a lot of like influencers and fitness people who maybe are not maybe what other people would deem credible people in our business,
Yeah.
regulated, certified. I want to get inside their mind and understand why they do this, not to judge them. It's like, I just want to know. Like, clearly, you're
Yes.
part of our industry, whether you're certified or not. How did you come to this idea? I just want to know all the angles,
Yeah.
like, so if I'm going to be a Christian or I'm believing God, I should know all the angles here. I should understand the historical context, significance, the reason for the resurrection, the actual evidence for it. I should know this
Yeah.
stuff, and I'd be like, Jesus, yeah, he overcame the grave. It's like, okay, we understand the context behind this, and the
Yeah.
evidence and who saw him and the
Yeah.
accounts. It's like, how can you not know that? Like, like,
And I am I always want to balance this out with saying feeling that you love God and that God loves you I'm never trying to take that away from anybody.
No, of course not.
There's no amount of archaeological evidence or historicity that can prove or deny that a person loves God and God loves
Of
them. And
course.
so
Yeah.
that's never the point of any conversation. The point of the conversation is to say, okay, let's start there. Let's start with the idea that God loves you and you love God. Now let's eradicate the bad information that we have about God
Exactly.
and we have about the history and of the worship of God and
Right.
all these kinds of things. I brought up recently to somebody that in ancient Canaan during the Israelite time and prior and everything, that there were a lot of snake cults, and we don't
Hmm.
exactly know why and where they kind of originate from. But I just thought it was very interesting that Moses and his brazen serpent, and so there's a lot of snake stuff going on there.
Yeah.
And I was just bringing that up, and that person was completely oblivious to the fact that there were a lot of snake cult stuff in the
Hmm.
area during that time. And there's like, really? That doesn't sound right. I was like, oh, because you've been hearing the revised version where Israel only always just worshiped Yahweh and
Yeah. Of course.
and if they didn't, then they were burned and killed and
Yeah.
bitten by flying serpents and things like that. Well, it's like, well, so I read the Bible under the assumption that it didn't happen that way,
Yeah.
and I think that's the healthy way to do it.
Right.
Okay, like every other mythology, it didn't happen this way.
Yeah.
Did it happen? Maybe. I'm not
Like
I'm not I'm
maybe.
not saying it didn't,
Right.
but I'm saying it didn't happen like
Like that.
this.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
I'm, I'm saying that somebody writing in when the Bible is finally written down between the years 6 and
Hmm.
300 around there BC, in Babylonia, of all
Right.
places, um I'm saying that they have a complete inability to quote verbatim Adam and
Of
Eve.
course. Of course.
So,
Of
so,
course.
so, so please don't tell me that that's exactly how it happened.
It's definitely not. But
Please.
but that's what's disturbing about today is someone could literally have, okay, let's take me and you. They can say, Simon, you said this on the episode with Dr. D. And like you could literally look him in the face and be like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
And then no, it's right here. Nope. Like people do that all the time, like right now. And that just literally blows
Yeah.
my mind.
That's
That's
that's the
another
Marjorie Taylor Greene
that's what I'm
thing.
saying. Like that's like
I
that
don't
is
remember
this feels like
texting
the
that,
first
tweeting that.
time. Yeah, like I understand that people didn't believe Jesus did miracles and stuff in that time. I understand, but it's like not like there was like iPhones and shit, it's like
Yeah.
and like there is tangible things you could see with your own eyes and to be like, let me run this back. Let me play this back for you, okay? Like
Yes.
you're playing back your favorite song. Here, play let's listen to the lyrics. Oh, that wasn't me. No, that's not you. Like I didn't say that. Like that to
Yeah.
me is like the destruction of people. Is like this in the face, the eye of irrefutable evidence. I didn't do that. I wasn't there. That wasn't me. Oh, we have
Yeah.
this. Your face is right here on the camera. Oh, that wasn't me. Like, what is happening with people?
Yeah. That's that. I wonder how facial recognition technology is gonna like if it's gonna make that better or worse. Because at some point, and I don't like to be, a conspiracy theorist, but at
Yeah.
some point, at least in all the major cities, you won't be able to walk anywhere without
Oh,
some kind of facial recognition
yeah.
device seeing you. They'll be outside of every store,
Of
especially the
course.
big stores, because they're going to want to see who's, collect information on everybody who walks
Yeah.
by
They'll
their
call it a
window.
surveillance state and the whole
Exactly.
thing.
And so anyway, it will be interesting to see at some point in our future when when this is our reality How many people will be able to say, nope, wasn't me?
Wasn't me. I'm like, we see you. I see you.
We see you
I
here.
literally see your
Yes.
face. Like, no, it was a deep fake. Somebody manipulated the thing, you know. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe, but like, I mean, really? Like you did that. It's like it's a problem for me. I have to get over it. It's like a real issue for me, honestly. That's the honest truth. I'm like,
It, and here's where the integrity comes in, where somebody tells me, you said this on the Dr. D podcast, and I say, no, I didn't, and then they show me the recording and I say, oh, I guess I did.
right. Just
that,
admit it.
that's all.
Yeah, I
Because our
did. So
human
what?
brains are so inaccurate.
Yeah.
We, you know, I think I'm notorious for this. I think I've had a conversation with my wife about something and I haven't.
I've done that too.
I thought,
Like,
I was like, well, I thought about talking to you about this. So in my mind, that became the
that
reality,
became the reality. That's
but it
exactly right.
wasn't. And I didn't talk. Oh, I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah, just
I
admit
meant
it.
to.
It's
I meant to.
okay. Yeah.
What
It's
you said
crazy.
to your daughter to me is so profound and it's so important. And I think one of the most important things that I can do with my children is apologize.
Yeah. Agreed.
One of those other things that turns me off from religiosity is the deification of people,
Yeah.
the deification of an old prophet or even Jesus himself. And that's going to sound sacrilege. It's going to sound heretical here. I'm not saying that Jesus isn't deified. Okay. I'm not saying that Jesus was, uh, uh, or I'm not saying that Jesus ever sinned. Let's just put it that way. That's the
Yeah.
easiest way to say it because most people who are Christians say Jesus never sinned.
Right.
But just having this conversation recently as well, there's a difference between sinning and making a mistake.
Yeah.
The Jesus that never made a mistake and never had to apologize to anybody, I can't relate to him. He can't relate to me. We don't understand each other.
Right.
Part of the learning of humility and to learn how to love other people is learning how to apologize even when you're right. Didn't we
Yeah.
just talk about this
Yeah.
recently?
Yeah.
Like apologizing when you're
Crazy.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's like, but when we deify somebody and say, oh, they never made a mistake, they
Yeah.
never did anything wrong, we
Yeah.
are demonizing wrongness.
Right.
And that right there says a lot about our integrity.
Yeah.
When we can't accept, just like we've been saying this whole time, when you can't accept ever being wrong because you think being wrong is the worst thing that could ever happen to you.
Right.
Like, no, it's
No,
not.
it's definitely not.
I'm so comfortable with being wrong.
Simon, we know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I,
Simon,
I'm
man.
more uncomfortable with being right.
I know. I get all the texts. I know, man. It's whoo, we gotta wind this down. This could be like a 10-hour marathon. I swear, man. It could be like, but you know what time of the show it is for
Oh, I'm
me to
ready.
say nice
I'm
things about
ready.
Simon. I never forget. I never forget this. Simon, you're the man. You really
Oh,
are. This is like such a meaningful time, literally every single time. You
yeah.
may be failing at a lot of other things, friend. You're not failing at this.
I appreciate that. And neither are you. I mean, this show that you have is such a success.
Thank you.
And it's here's the thing. If you never got a single listener, it's a
Be
success
fun. Yeah.
because of the conversations you're having.
Yeah.
I
That's right.
mean, you enrich the lives of everybody who comes on your show,
Thank you.
and they enrich your lives and your life, and you pass that on. You pay that forward in
Mm-hmm.
every new conversation you
That's right.
have, and I think that's a beautiful thing, man. So I
Thank you,
really
man.
appreciate it.
All right, man. Listen, another excellent episode. And Simon, until next time, man.
Until next time.